How's it going, everybody? It is Lockhart here, and today I wanted to talk about Solo Leveling the anime. So don't mind the background, that's just something that I have playing, so that way we can actually talk about it. Because honestly, I've tried to make this video like so many times because I'm like collecting my thoughts as I go after watching the first episode, which I was really nervous to watch because I do love the manhwa, and it was something that like a colleague of mine mentioned to me like so many times, and eventually when I dug into it, I was just like all in, and I was like so in love with it. So there are some key differences, and before I start getting into any of this stuff, okay, by the way, first of all, obviously this is my opinion alone. It doesn't reflect the anime in any way, the manhwa in any way. It's just my opinion, my experience, and more than anything else, there is going to be a lot of spoilers, so please keep that in mind, that like this is like anime. Speaking about animes and things that like I know a little bit more about, which is like very rare for me. I usually just go in blind to like new things, but I may or may not say things intentionally that could spoil the anime a little bit, if not entirely even. So this isn't for like a person who doesn't know what solo leveling is at all. This is for persons who have at least finished the manhwa and aren't sure about the anime but want to get into the anime but want to just hear about some things about it, right? So if that's you, amazing, let me talk about it. If that's not you, be forewarned, you may get, it could be crazy spoilery, if that's a word. Anyway, so a couple things. The anime has a lot of, so they've jumped the timelines on a bunch of things, right? The way it opens is not the same way the manhwa opens, which is actually not the same way that the hard copies open. Because if you've read the manhwa, initially the beginning of it is a little bit different, right? Because the beginning of it doesn't make sense with the ending. I think as manhwa readers, if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. However, in the book, like physical, they've excluded that, so that way the ending would make sense, I think, right? Now, the anime has done some interesting things, because like I'd imagine that when you look at it as a whole, you're like, okay, you can make sense of like why things belong the way they are. Because like if like you're a first time watcher only, it's gonna take a little bit, like it doesn't make like the most of sense. And in like a typical anime fashion style, there's a lot of world building, there's a lot of like past to future, there's always like in any sort of isekai kind of like this, where it's just like 3 years ago this happened, blah blah blah, and suddenly hunters came and blah, 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 you know. And obviously not like any of that at all, but you do get introduced to some characters that you would not have met until much later on, right? So I'm totally bad on the names, and I have always been, but you know, Sung Jin Woo, I know who he is, but I was I was never sure about like the other fellows who are like the, you know, if you read the manhwa, you know, the beast guy and then the super fire guy. You get to meet them a little bit earlier on, and I thought like, okay, that's interesting, because they don't get a lot of book time in the past, because like obviously the story revolves around our main character, who in himself you really only want to see anyway. But it was nice to get them, nice to show them off earlier on, because I do think that they're gonna build, so I don't know if they're gonna make him as overpowered as quickly as they did in the manhwas. I think it will be a different type of pacing there, and I think the reason I feel that way is because, one, they really start off with like, okay, these are the S rank hunters by introducing these two folks, and they just like go ham, and you're like, okay, super powerful dudes, cool, makes a lot of sense. So this is like currently the pinnacle of like you know, and then later on they're gonna introduce, you know, the other ones. But right now they have the S ranks, and they also, so when they introduce them in, you get the feeling of like, this makes sense, this is going to be like the height of like being a hunter. So the story, and going into the story as it's progressing through the episode, it keeps going to these moments of like, you know, these are what hunters do, here's some like they introduced like Hunter's training camp, which is like what? And they also introduced Chahayan. Anyway, if you know what I'm talking about, Fire Guy's right hand ish, and she gets introduced really early as well, and they're making her to be a bit. I don't know if they're making her to be like top tier S rank or not, but you get the feeling that like, okay, who's this person? Clearly there's something going on, super strong, right? Okay. They introduced a little bit about her personality as well, and that's like amazing. And then it's like, I don't see why they would have done that, other than the fact that it's just like, okay, like, you know, we're gonna introduce these characters earlier on because I think they're gonna have more of a prominent role in the story. So I think there will be more side quests. I don't know how fast they're looking to pace Solo Leveling as a whole, because in the first episode you're looking about in book wise you're looking at roughly 100 pages total as a whole, because they've added in a lot of filler things that were anime exclusive. So again, you meet the chief, you meet the chief of the Hunters Association right away, which was like really surprising, because he's actually narrating certain aspects of like hunter life and how the world has changed and why like hunters are super important. So that was like a really interesting choice of world building, as well as like, you know, obviously what it was like crazy gruesome too. Like the beginning of it was like, wow, like where is this gonna go? So of course, like typical Nappa Studios, they kind of were not afraid to add a little bit of violence, a lot of violence. So I know that will be interesting to see, because like they made sure that first episode had a lot of dramatics in that way to create a dire sense of urgency and a real sense of doom. So that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, all in all, first episode a little slow, some action, because if you take into account what would have happened without the initial episode, the initial opening scene, then it would actually been like a pretty boring episode in terms of action. So it was good that they did that in the beginning. And then the healer guy with the healer guy with the book, they introduced him early on as well. So I think it will be interesting to see what they do, because clearly they are taking Solo Leveling as a whole. So you got to think that like the things that they're doing right now are jumping between different chapters of the book and such. So I don't know, it's keeping me on my toes, to say the least, I think. So yeah. Am I gonna continue watching? Yes, I will. I'm very curious as to see how it's gonna go, how they're gonna jump, and what they'll skip and what they'll keep. So far, it seems like they haven't skipped anything. They're making our boy Sung Jin-woo look like a bit of a wimp, which makes a lot of sense, but they've also added in the fact that he is every situation is life or death. So they're making that really clear, because they've reiterated that point so many times. Like they really emphasize the fact that he is the weakest hunter aggressively. So in the first episode, obviously it's like, yo, you know, Sung is like crazy weak, you know, even E rank dungeons will get him killed. Like he's always starving, he's always getting stabbed, he's always like, you know, at the back end of things, risking his life to get $2, you know, so he can eat Toonie Tuesdays. And they really build on that quite a bit. So I think they're doing that so that way the growth will be a lot more evident. I do think that that's maybe why they're introducing certain S rank hunters early, so that way, you know, the growth feels more substantial. So either, and I don't know if they're going to add anything else, but there are some anime exclusives here, like the opening scene. So super cool. I hope they stay true to the source material, I'm excited either way. Am I a little thrown off that it's a lot of Japanese with Korean names? Not really. Because one, I don't speak either language, so it doesn't bother me. But two, I am used to I am used to the Japanese language, where they do speak only Japanese names. So like the Japanese language with only Korean names sounds a little funny. But otherwise, I'm curious. Y'all got me on the first episode. Let's see how it goes. Anyway, if you've liked this video so far, please like, subscribe, comment. I would appreciate it. I will try to cover episode by episode because I want to keep up with this. And then if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks, guys.